Baby finds a pregnant German Shepherd in trash. What happens next is heartbreaking. The rain poured relentlessly against the windshield, turning the world outside into a blur of darkness and shifting shadows. Thunder rumbled overhead, shaking the old truck as it navigated the back roads on the outskirts of town. 5-year-old Noah pressed his small face against the cold glass, watching the raindrops race down the window. "Daddy, are we almost home?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Ethan Matthews tightened his grip on the steering wheel, squinting through the downpour. "Almost, buddy. Just a few more minutes." It had been a long day, and all he wanted was to get home, wrap Noah in a warm blanket, and put this miserable storm behind them. The shortcut they took led past the town's abandoned buildings and the sprawling garbage dump, a place he normally paid no attention to. But that night, fate had different plans. "Stop, Daddy! Stop the car!" Noah suddenly cried out, his tiny finger pressing against the window. Ethan's heart skipped a beat as he slammed on the brakes. The truck skidded slightly before coming to a halt. "What is it?" he asked, scanning the rain-slicked road ahead. "There's something moving. In the garbage." Noah's voice was filled with urgency. "I saw it!" Ethan sighed, running a hand through his damp hair. "It's probably just trash blowing in the wind or a raccoon." Noah's blue eyes filled with tears. "Please, Daddy, what if someone's hurt?" Ethan hesitated. Ever since his wife passed away 2 years ago, Noah had become more attuned to suffering, more compassionate, as if trying to shield others from the pain he had known. Ethan couldn't ignore that. "Ethan." "Okay, buddy, wait here, lock the doors." Grabbing an umbrella, he stepped out into the storm. The wind howled, nearly knocking him off balance as he made his way toward the garbage heap. His flashlight beam cut through the rain, illuminating piles of discarded waste, broken furniture, plastic bags, and shattered glass. He was about to turn back when he saw it. A shape, a slight movement beneath a torn tarp. Ethan approached cautiously, his boots sinking into the mud. He pulled the tarp aside, and his breath caught in his throat. A dog, a German Shepherd. She lay motionless, her fur matted with mud and blood. Her ribcage barely moved, each breath shallow and labored. But what shocked him most was her swollen belly. She was pregnant, and she was dying. A soft knock on the truck window made him turn. Noah's face was pressed against the glass, worry etched across his young features. Before Ethan could motion for him to stay put, the door flew open and Noah was running toward him, rain drenching his small frame. "Noah, I told you to stay in the truck," Ethan shouted over the storm. But Noah was already kneeling beside the dog, his small hand reaching out, hesitating. "She's hurt, Daddy," he whispered. "Don't touch her, buddy. She might—" But Ethan's warning came too late. Noah gently rested his hand on the dog's head. What happened next sent a shiver through Ethan's spine. The dog, barely conscious, weakly lifted her head. A soft whimper escaped her lips, and with the last bit of strength she had left, she licked Noah's hand. "She likes me," Noah whispered, his face lighting up with something Ethan hadn't seen in a long time. "Hope. We have to help her." Ethan's chest tightened. The last thing they needed was a sick, pregnant dog. His job at the construction site barely covered the bills. How could he take care of an animal in such dire condition? "Noah, we can't just—" "She'll die if we leave her here," Noah interrupted, his voice trembling, just like Mommy did. The words struck Ethan like a physical blow. His son rarely spoke about his mother's death, carrying his grief in silence, and now he was linking that pain to this abandoned dog. Ethan closed his eyes. When he opened them, his decision was made. "Okay, buddy," he said softly, let's get her to the truck." Noah's face brightened with relief. "Really?" Ethan shrugged off his jacket and wrapped it around the dog's frail body before lifting her into his arms. She was heartbreakingly light, just skin, bones, and the precious lives she carried inside her. As they settled her onto a makeshift bed in the truck, Noah sat beside her, whispering words of comfort. "It's okay, doggy. We're going to take care of you now." The ride home was silent, except for Noah's soft murmurs and the sound of the rain easing into a gentle drizzle. When they arrived, Ethan carried the dog inside while Noah ran ahead gathering blankets. "She needs a name," Noah declared, as he arranged a nest of warmth in the living room. "Everyone needs a name. It helps them fight." Ethan hesitated. Naming her meant committing to her. Noah studied the dog, then smiled. "Luna," he said, "because she's pretty like the moon." Luna, the name suited her. Ethan sat beside his son, watching as Noah gently stroked the dog's damp fur. Despite her weakness, despite her pain, Luna's eyes held something familiar, trust. Maybe, just maybe, they had found each other for a reason. As the storm cleared outside, inside their small home, something else was shifting. A grieving boy, a broken man, and a dying dog had crossed paths in the darkness. And in that moment, as Luna closed her eyes with a soft sigh, something fragile yet powerful was born. Hope! The night was quiet except for the rhythmic breathing of the 5 tiny puppies nestled against their mother. Their small bodies twitched in their sleep, paws occasionally kicking as if chasing unseen dreams. Noah sat beside them, his small hand resting gently on Luna's head, whispering softly to her. "You did so good, Luna," he murmured. "Your babies are safe now." Ethan watched his son from the armchair, exhaustion weighing heavily on his shoulders. Just a few hours ago, he had feared Luna wouldn't survive the night. Now she lay, curled protectively around her newborns, her breathing still shallow but steady. Against all odds, she had brought 5 lives into the world. A miracle. Noah glanced up at him. "She's tired, Daddy." "I know, buddy," Ethan said, running a hand through his damp hair. He was still trying to process everything that had happened in the last 24 hours. "She needs rest, just like you." Noah shook his head. "I'll stay with her." Ethan sighed, but didn't argue. He knew there was no convincing Noah otherwise. Instead, he draped a blanket over his son's small shoulders and kissed the top of his head. "Just don't wake the puppies," he said softly. Noah nodded, but his eyes remained fixed on Luna. Ethan knew that look. It was the same one his son had worn after his mother's funeral. An unspoken determination to protect, to hold on to the things he loved, no matter the cost. As the hours passed, the house fell into silence. Outside, the storm had finally passed, leaving behind a world washed clean by the rain. Ethan dozed in his chair, too exhausted to make it to his own bed. Then, just as dawn was beginning to lighten the sky, a sound shattered the fragile peace. A car engine idling just outside. Luna's ears perked, her body going rigid. A low growl rumbled in her throat, a sound unlike any she had made before. Noah stirred beside her, rubbing his sleepy eyes. "Daddy?" he whispered. Ethan was already on his feet. He crossed the room in 3 long strides and peered through the blinds. A black sedan sat parked across the street. No movement, no one stepping out. Just waiting. A chill ran down his spine. "Get away from the window," he told Noah, his voice firm but calm. Noah obeyed, scooting closer to Luna. "Who is it?" "I don't know." But Ethan had a sinking feeling that whoever was sitting in that car wasn't just lost or waiting for someone. They were watching. His mind flashed back to the strange scar on Luna's ear. The one Dr. Lila had said looked like a breeder's mark. Was it possible someone was looking for her? The phone rang, cutting through the heavy silence. Ethan grabbed it off the table, his heart pounding. Unknown number. He hesitated before answering. "Hello?" For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Then a voice, calm, polite, and eerily familiar. "Mr. Matthews, I believe you have something that belongs to us." Ethan stiffened. His eyes flicked toward Luna, who was now standing protectively in front of Noah. "You must have the wrong number," he said, forcing his voice to remain steady. A soft chuckle. "Come now, let's not play games. The German Shepherd, she's quite valuable to us, especially with her litter." Ethan's stomach dropped. "We're prepared to be generous," the man continued. "Say $5,000. That's a lot of money for a construction worker raising a child alone." Cold fury surged through Ethan's veins. They knew about him. They knew where he lived.
"No deal," he said through gritted teeth.
A sigh on the other end. That's disappointing, but understandable. I suppose we'll have to find other ways to reclaim our property. Click. The line went dead. Ethan stood frozen, his pulse hammering in his ears. He turned back to Noah, who was staring up at him, his little hands curled into Luna's fur.
"Who was that?" Noah asked, his voice small.
Ethan forced a smile, ruffling his son's hair. "No one important, buddy. Why don't you go sit with Luna and the puppies for a bit?" Noah frowned, but didn't argue. As soon as he was settled, Ethan grabbed his phone again and dialed a number. Officer Bennett answered on the first ring. "Matthews?" "I just got a call," Ethan said quietly, keeping his eyes on the car outside. "Someone offering money for Luna and the puppies. They knew my name, my job, my family." A pause, then Bennett's voice, sharp and urgent. "Lock your doors. Keep Luna inside. I'll send a patrol by your house now." Ethan hung up and turned back to the window. The car was gone. That night, Ethan barely slept. He sat in the living room with a baseball bat resting against his knee, listening to every sound the house made. Luna remained on high alert, positioned near the front door, ears twitching at every creak of the floorboards. For 3 days, nothing happened. No more calls, no more black sedans. Then on the 4th night, Luna's growl woke him. Someone was outside. Ethan moved quickly, grabbing his phone as he crept toward Noah's room. His son was still asleep, curled beside the puppy nest. Luna stood at the door, her hackles raised. The soft crunch of footsteps on gravel. A metallic scraping at the back door. Ethan's blood ran cold. He dialed Bennett. "Someone's trying to break in." "Stay put, we're on our way." But the moment the words left his mouth, glass shattered. The back window. Ethan rushed to Noah's room, shaking his son awake. "Buddy, listen to me. You need to hide." Noah blinked sleepily. "What's wrong?" "Just do it, okay?" He grabbed Noah and carried him to the bathroom, setting him down and locking the door behind him. "Stay here. Don't come out until I say."
"Daddy."
Ethan didn't have time to explain. He turned back toward the living room just as the kitchen door creaked open. A shadow moved. Luna lunged. A sharp cry of pain as her teeth sank into the intruder's arm. The man staggered back, cursing. A second figure appeared behind him. "Get the dog off me!" the first man shouted. Ethan didn't hesitate. He grabbed the baseball bat and swung. The second intruder dodged, but Luna was relentless. She snarled, her body shielding the puppies. Then sirens. Flashing red and blue lights poured through the windows. The intruders cursed, backing toward the door. "This isn't over," one of them spat. Then they were gone. Ethan barely had time to breathe before Bennett burst through the door, gun drawn. "You okay?" Ethan exhaled shakily. "Yeah." Then he heard the small, frightened voice behind him.
"Daddy?"
He turned to find Noah standing in the hallway, clutching one of the puppies. His face was pale, his eyes wide with fear. Luna moved to his side, pressing against him protectively. And in that moment, Ethan realized something. Luna wasn't just a dog. She was family. And no one was going to take her away. The house had never felt so full. Luna lay in a warm nest of blankets in the corner of the living room, her body curled protectively around her 5 newborn puppies. Their tiny paws twitched as they nestled close to her belly, their soft whimpers barely audible in the stillness of the night. Noah sat beside them, his small fingers gently stroking Luna's ear.
"You did it, Luna," he whispered. "Your babies are here."
Ethan watched from the couch, exhaustion tugging at his eyelids. It had been a long, harrowing night. Luna had fought to bring these tiny lives into the world, and now she was resting, though her breathing remained shallow, her body still too frail from the suffering she had endured before they found her. The storm outside had finally passed, but inside their small home something new had settled, a fragile peace. Noah shifted closer to Luna, whispering again, "We'll take care of you, I promise." Ethan swallowed hard, a lump forming in his throat. He had taken in the dog reluctantly, hesitant about the responsibility, but now, watching his son's devotion, He understood. This wasn't just about saving a stray. It was about something much deeper, about healing, about hope. But that hope was fragile, because someone was looking for Luna. The first warning, the first sign of trouble came the next morning. Ethan was drinking his coffee, staring absently at the rising sun through the kitchen window, when he noticed a black sedan parked across the street. The windows were tinted, the engine off. No one got out. A chill ran down his spine. It could have been nothing, a neighbor's visitor, someone lost, someone checking their phone before driving off.
But then it was there again that afternoon, and again that night.
Luna noticed it too. She would lift her head, her ears perking up, her amber eyes locked on the window. A low, uneasy rumble would start in her chest. She knew. That night, as Ethan was tucking Noah into bed, the phone rang. Unknown number? He hesitated before answering. Hello? A pause, then a voice, smooth, controlled, too polite. Mr. Matthews, I believe you have something that belongs to us. Ethan stiffened, his grip tightening around the phone. He glanced toward Luna, who lay in the living room, her body curled around her puppies.
You must have the wrong number, he said, his voice careful.
A quiet chuckle. Come now, we both know that's not true, the German Shepherd. She's quite valuable to us, especially with her litter. Ethan's stomach turned. We're prepared to be generous, the man continued. Say $5,000, that's a lot of money for a single father. Ethan's breath caught. They knew?
They knew who he was, where he lived, that he was raising Noah alone.
A cold rage crept into his voice. Not for sale. A sigh on the other end. That's unfortunate, but understandable. I suppose we'll have to find other ways. The line went dead. Ethan lowered the phone slowly. His hands were shaking. Luna growled low in her throat. She understood. And so did Ethan.
They weren't safe.
The break-in. 3 nights later, the black sedan was back. It was late. Noah had fallen asleep in the living room beside the puppies, his hand resting protectively on Luna's back. Ethan sat by the window, watching, waiting. Then movement. A shadow slipped across the yard. Ethan's pulse quickened. He reached for his phone, dialing Officer Bennett's number.
There's someone outside, he whispered.
Stay put, we're on our way, Bennett assured him.
But the moment Ethan hung up, he heard it.
A soft, metallic scrape. The back door. Someone was picking the lock. Luna was on her feet instantly, her body tense, her ears pinned forward. A deep, rumbling growl built in her chest, her fur bristling. Ethan moved quickly. He scooped Noah into his arms, whispering, Buddy, wake up, we need to hide. Noah blinked sleepily. Daddy? No questions, just trust me. Ethan carried him to the bathroom, setting him down. Lock the door, stay quiet. But Luna, I'll protect her. He placed a hand on Noah's cheek. Do not open this door until I come for you. Noah's blue eyes filled with fear, but he nodded. Ethan shut the door just as the sound of glass shattering echoed through the house. The kitchen window.
They were in.
Ethan grabbed the baseball bat from the closet. His heart pounded as he positioned himself between the intruders and the nest of sleeping puppies. Then, the first figure appeared in the dim light. A man, tall, lean, dressed in black. His movements were careful, calculated. He wasn't here to rob them. He was here for Luna. Mr. Matthews, the man said smoothly as if this were a social call. I'd hoped this could be easy. Ethan tightened his grip on the bat. You need to leave. Now. The man smiled. Hand over the dog, no one gets hurt. Luna stepped forward, her body rigid, her teeth bared. The man's eyes flicked to her. She remembers me. Ethan's blood ran cold. She's not yours, he growled. The man sighed, reaching into his jacket. Pity. Before Ethan could react, Luna lunged. She moved with breathtaking speed, her powerful jaws clamping onto the man's arm. He let out a strangled cry, staggering backward. The second intruder stepped forward, only to be met with Ethan's bat. The crack echoed through the room.
Then sirens.
Flashing red and blue lights filled the windows. The intruders cursed, shoving past each other in a desperate attempt to escape. They were too late. The front door burst open, and Officer Bennett stormed inside, gun drawn. Hands where I can see them! It was over in seconds. The men were restrained, pulled outside into the waiting patrol cars. Ethan stood frozen, his breath ragged.
Then, Daddy?
He turned to see Noah standing in the hallway, clutching one of the puppies, his face pale, his small hands trembling. Luna padded to his side, pressing against him protectively. Ethan dropped to his knees, pulling his son into his arms.
It's okay, he whispered. We're safe.
Noah sniffled against his shoulder. Luna protected us. Ethan looked down at the dog, who sat panting but alert, her amber eyes locked on him. He reached out, stroking her head. Yeah, he murmured. She did.
And in that moment he understood.
Luna wasn't just a dog. She was family. And no one, not now, not ever, was going to take her away. The night was quiet, but Ethan couldn't sleep. He sat in the dim glow of the kitchen, his hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. Across the room, curled up in a nest of blankets, Luna lay with her 5 tiny puppies pressed against her belly. Their soft, rhythmic breaths filled the silence. Noah was beside her, his small body curled protectively around one of the puppies. Even in sleep, his fingers rested lightly against Luna's fur, as if reassuring himself that she was still there. Ethan sighed, rubbing his tired eyes. He had never expected any of this. A week ago, he was just a man trying to get through each day, raising his son alone, struggling to keep up with the bills. Now, his home was filled with the sounds of newborn puppies and the quiet, steady presence of the dog that had, somehow, become a part of their family, a part of their hearts.
But deep down, a gnawing fear remained.
Because someone wanted her back. A warning in the dark. The first sign of trouble came just days after Luna gave birth. It was late evening, and Noah was outside in the yard with Luna, playing gently with the puppies in the soft grass. Ethan stood on the porch, sipping a beer, letting himself believe just for a moment that life was normal again. Then he saw it. A car, black, tinted windows, parked down the street. It had been there that morning, and the night before. Ethan felt his stomach twist. At first, he told himself it was nothing, but as he watched, the engine started. The car didn't move, just sat there, watching. Luna noticed it too. She lifted her head, ears pinned forward, her body going still. A low growl rumbled in her chest. She knew. Ethan exhaled slowly, forcing himself to stay calm. "Noah, buddy," he called, keeping his voice light. "Why don't you bring the puppies inside?" Noah looked up, a smile still on his face. "Okay, Daddy." He carefully gathered the squirming pups and carried them inside, one by one. Ethan waited until he was gone, then took out his phone. The moment he dialed, the car pulled away. He stared after it, his grip tightening around the phone. This wasn't over. The break-in, 3 nights later, it happened. It was past midnight when Ethan woke to the sound of Luna's growl. Not the soft, warning growl she made when someone approached the house. This was different, deeper, more dangerous. Ethan sat up, heart pounding. Luna stood rigid in the living room, her body positioned protectively in front of the puppies, her eyes locked on the front door. Then, a soft click, the doorknob turning. Someone was trying to get in. Ethan moved quickly, grabbing the baseball bat from the corner. He crossed the room in 3 quick strides and pressed his back against the wall beside the door. Then, glass shattered from the kitchen. They weren't just trying the door. They were already inside. Ethan's pulse thundered in his ears. He turned just in time to see a shadow move through the kitchen, slow and careful. Luna's growl deepened, her body coiling like a spring ready to attack. Ethan tightened his grip on the bat. Then the shadow spoke. "Easy now," a man's voice murmured. "No need to make this difficult." Ethan recognized that voice. The man from the phone call. Cold rage flooded his veins.
"You have 5 seconds to get out of my house," Ethan said, his voice low.
A chuckle. "Come on, Matthews, we both know this isn't about you. Just give us the dog." "She's not yours." She was. Something in the way he said it made Ethan's stomach churn.
"You used her," he spat. "You threw her away."
She was an investment, and those puppies, worth a fortune. Luna bared her teeth, her growl turning into a full snarl. Ethan had heard enough. He swung. The bat connected with the intruder's side, knocking him back. The man cursed, stumbling against the counter. Then, another figure emerged from the darkness. Ethan barely had time to react before a fist slammed into his ribs, knocking the air from his lungs. The world blurred. A sharp yelp rang out. "Luna!"
"No!" Ethan gasped, pushing himself up just in time to see the first man grab her by the scruff.
Luna fought. Fangs flashed, a strangled scream as she bit deep into his arm.
"Damn it!" the man hissed, shaking her off.
Then sirens. Flashing red and blue lights illuminated the windows. The intruders hesitated. "Move!" one of them barked. And just like that, they were gone. The front door banged open as Officer Bennett stormed inside, gun drawn. "Matthews?" Ethan coughed, holding his ribs. I'm fine." His eyes darted to Luna. She was panting, her body low to the ground, her eyes wide but alert. Blood dripped from her muzzle. She had fought for them, just like he knew she would. A choice to make. The days that followed were filled with police reports, security cameras, and sleepless nights. The men were gone, but the danger still lingered. Because Rain, the man behind it all, was still out there. "You need to consider rehoming Luna," Bennett said one evening, his face grim. "As long as those puppies are worth something to him, he'll keep coming." Ethan looked over at Noah, who sat on the floor, playing with the puppies. Luna was beside him, watching over him like she always did.
How could he take her away from him, from them?
"I can't do that," Ethan said quietly. She's family." Bennett sighed. "Then we need to set a trap." Ethan froze. "A trap?" The officer nodded. "We let Rain think he has another chance, and when he comes for her, we end it, for good." Ethan's stomach turned. Using Luna and the puppies as bait, it felt wrong, but what choice did he have?
If they didn't stop Rain now, he would never stop.
Ethan glanced at Noah, then at Luna. She was watching him, as if she already understood what had to be done. And maybe she did.
Because Luna wasn't just a dog.
She was a survivor, and she wasn't done fighting yet. Ethan took a slow breath, then nodded. "Okay," he said. "We end this." The house was quiet except for the rhythmic breathing of the puppies nestled against Luna's warm belly. Their tiny bodies twitched as they dreamed, their soft whimpers filling the stillness of the room. Noah sat beside them, his little hand resting gently on Luna's fur. He whispered something to her, words too soft for Ethan to hear, but he saw the way Luna's ears flicked, as if she understood. Ethan leaned against the doorway, watching. He had never planned for any of this. A week ago, he was just a single father trying to make ends meet, trying to raise his son without drowning in grief. Now, his home was filled with newborn life, with a dog who had come into their lives broken and beaten, but who had somehow, against all odds, survived. She wasn't just surviving anymore, though. She was fighting, and so was he.
But there was something else.
A feeling Ethan couldn't shake.
Something was coming.
Something worse. And he wasn't sure if he was ready. A warning comes too late. The next morning, Noah was in the backyard with Luna and the puppies, the golden sunlight turning their fur warm and soft. Ethan was fixing the porch steps when his phone rang. Unknown number. He let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again. With a sigh, he answered. "Yeah." A pause.
Then that voice.
Calm, even, dangerous. "Mr. Matthews?" Ethan's grip on the phone tightened. His eyes immediately went to Luna. She had stiffened, ears pinned forward. She knew. "I believe we made you an offer," the voice continued. 5,000 for the dog and the puppies." "Not interested," Ethan said, his voice cold. A soft chuckle. "Come now, let's not be difficult." Ethan's jaw clenched. "You need to stop calling." "I will," the man said pleasantly. "Soon." Then the line went dead. Ethan stared at his phone. His stomach twisted. He turned toward the street.
And froze.
A black sedan, parked just down the road. Watching. They weren't just making threats anymore.
They were here.
The attack. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. Luna couldn't either. She sat by the front door, ears pricked, eyes alert.
Waiting.
So Ethan waited with her. Then, just past midnight, he heard it. A soft creak. The back gate. Someone was inside the yard. Ethan moved fast. He grabbed the baseball bat from the corner, heart hammering as he stepped toward the back door.
Then,
Glass shattered. The kitchen window. Luna exploded into action, her snarl ripping through the silence as she launched toward the sound. Ethan ran after her, just as two figures pushed their way into the house. "Stay back!" he roared.
but they weren't here for him.
They were here for her. Luna lunged. Her jaws found flesh. A man screamed as she sank her teeth into his arm. The second man moved forward until Ethan swung. The bat connected with his ribs. The man let out a strangled grunt, stumbling backward. Luna released her hold, her body coiling, ready to strike again. The man she had bitten clutched his bleeding arm. "You little—" Then sirens. The men froze. Red and blue lights flooded the windows. "Move!" one of them hissed. And then they were gone. Bennett stormed in seconds later, gun drawn. "Ethan!" Ethan was shaking, his breath ragged. Luna stood panting, her eyes locked on the broken window. Watching, waiting.
They tried to take her, Ethan rasped.
Bennett nodded, jaw tight. "Yeah, and they'll try again." The plan? The next morning, Bennett sat at the kitchen table, a deep frown on his face. "They won't stop," he said. "Not until they have her." Ethan glanced at Luna. She was curled around Noah, the boy fast asleep, one arm draped over her back. "She's not going anywhere," Ethan said. Bennett exhaled. "Then we set a trap." Ethan stiffened. "A trap?" Bennett nodded. "We let them think they have another chance, and when they come, we take them down." Ethan's stomach turned.
You want to use her as bait?
Bennett's expression darkened. "I don't like it either, but it's the only way to stop them." Ethan swallowed hard. His eyes drifted back to Luna. She was watching him. She understood.
And somehow he knew.
She was ready.
So was he. Okay, Ethan murmured.
"We end this." The final confrontation, the house was quiet.
Too quiet.
Ethan stood in the dark, baseball bat in hand, waiting. The plan was simple. Make them think the house was unprotected.
Make them come. And when they did,
Take them down.
then a noise.
A shadow moved outside. Luna tensed.
They were here.
Ethan's heart pounded as he watched the doorknob turn.
Slow, careful. Then
The door burst open. The first man stepped inside, moving fast. Ethan moved faster. He swung. The bat cracked against the intruder's side, sending him crashing into the table. The second man lunged. Luna met him mid-air. Her teeth found his throat. He hit the ground, screaming. Ethan turned to the first man.
it was him.
The voice from the phone. The man staggered up, rage twisting his features. "You don't know what you're doing." Ethan's grip tightened on the bat. "Yeah, I do." The man reached into his jacket.
Gun.
Before he could aim, Luna struck. Her jaws clamped down on his wrist. A shot fired.
Missed. Then police sirens.
The room exploded with red and blue lights. Bennett's voice rang out. "Drop the weapon!"
It was over.
The men were dragged away, handcuffed and bleeding. Ethan exhaled shakily. Luna limped toward him. Noah ran to her. "Luna!" She licked his face, tail wagging weakly. Ethan knelt beside them. "You did good, girl," he whispered, stroking her fur. She leaned into him. And for the first time in weeks,
They were safe.
the future, the days that followed, were filled with news reports, police statements, and endless cups of coffee. Rain's operation had been shut down. Luna's puppies had homes waiting, all except one. Noah clutched the smallest puppy to his chest. "She stays." Ethan smiled. "Yeah?" Noah nodded. "Luna says so." Ethan ruffled his son's hair. "Then she stays." Luna wagged her tail. A new chapter was beginning. For all of them. And this time,
No one was taking them away.
the morning light spilled through the curtains, casting a golden glow over the small living room. The house was quiet, except for the soft, rhythmic breathing of Luna and her puppies. They lay nestled in a nest of blankets, 5 tiny bodies pressed against their mother's warmth, their delicate paws twitching in sleep. Noah sat beside them, his little fingers gently stroking Luna's fur. She let out a soft sigh, her amber eyes half closed but alert, as if she still wasn't sure she could fully relax. Even in safety, she remained a guardian. Ethan stood by the doorway watching. A week ago, Luna had been a dying dog in a garbage dump, abandoned and afraid. Now, she was a mother cradling the new life she had fought so hard to protect.
But their battle wasn't over.
Because someone still wanted her back. Ethan could feel it, like a storm gathering on the horizon. And this time, he wasn't sure if they'd be able to outrun it. A shadow in the distance. It started with a phone call. The number was unknown, but Ethan knew before he even answered. He hesitated, his fingers tightening around the phone before he finally pressed it to his ear. A familiar voice slid through the line, smooth and calculated. "Mr. Matthews," the man said, his tone almost friendly. "I assume by now you understand why I'm calling." Ethan's jaw clenched. He stepped away from the living room, his back to Luna and Noah. "You need to stop." A soft chuckle. Now, no need to be hostile. We're simply trying to retrieve what belongs to us." "She's not yours," Ethan growled. "She was," the man corrected, his voice calm. "And her puppies? They're worth a great deal to us." Ethan's stomach twisted. $5,000, the man continued. "Cash, no questions asked. You let us take her, we walk away." Ethan's grip tightened. "Not a chance." A pause. Then the voice dropped to something quieter, more menacing. "That's disappointing, but not unexpected." Click. The line went dead. Ethan exhaled slowly, forcing himself to stay calm. He turned toward the window, and his heart stopped. A black sedan sat parked across the street.
Watching. Waiting.
Luna, as if sensing his unease, lifted her head. Her ears twitched. She sniffed the air, a low growl rumbling deep in her throat. She knew,
And so did Ethan. This wasn't over.
The night of the break-in, Ethan barely slept. Neither did Luna. She stayed by the front door, her amber eyes glowing in the dim light. Every now and then her ears would flick toward an unseen sound, her body tensing. She was waiting, so Ethan waited with her. Then, just past midnight, it happened. A soft creak. The back gate. Ethan sat up. Luna stiffened.
Then, a sound at the back door.
A metallic scrape. They were picking the lock. Ethan moved quickly. He grabbed the baseball bat from the corner, his pulse hammering as he stepped into the darkened kitchen. A shadow moved outside the window. Then glass shattered. Ethan barely had time to react before Luna exploded into action. A deep, guttural snarl tore from her throat as she lunged toward the intruder. A man staggered backward, cursing, his arm raised in defense.
"Luna, no!" Ethan shouted, but she was already airborne.
Her teeth sank into the man's sleeve, dragging him down. A second figure moved in from the side. Ethan swung. The bat connected with a sickening crack against the man's ribs. He let out a strangled gasp, stumbling backward. The first man shoved Luna off, blood dripping from his arm. He swore, eyes blazing with rage. "You..."
Then sirens.
The front yard flooded with red and blue lights. Ethan exhaled sharply, his body still poised to strike. The men hesitated.
Then they ran.
Bennett burst through the front door, gun drawn. "Ethan!" Ethan let the bat drop to his side. His breath came in short, ragged bursts. Luna stood panting, her body tense but victorious. She had protected them.
Again.
A choice to make. The next morning, Bennett sat across from Ethan at the kitchen table, his expression grim. "They're not going to stop," he said. Ethan rubbed his face, exhaustion creeping into his bones. "I figured." Bennett leaned forward. "We need to take the fight to them." Ethan frowned. "What do you mean?" "We set a trap," Bennett said simply. "We let them think they have another chance, and when they come for her, we take them down." Ethan's stomach churned. "You want to use her as bait?" Bennett sighed. "I know how it sounds, but these guys aren't just thugs. They're part of something bigger. And if we don't stop them now, they'll keep coming, whether it's for Luna or someone else's dog." Ethan looked toward the living room. Noah was sitting on the floor, playing with the puppies. Luna lay beside him, her head resting protectively against his leg. She was part of their family now. And family didn't run. Ethan turned back to Bennett.
"Okay," he said quietly. We do it."
The final confrontation, the night of the sting, Ethan felt like he couldn't breathe. The house was dark, except for the dim glow of a single lamp. Noah was safely at Dr. Lila's clinic. Luna was inside, waiting. And so was Ethan. Then, A car door slammed outside. Footsteps. The doorknob turned.
Then
The door burst open. The first man stepped inside, moving fast. Ethan moved faster.
he swung.
The bat cracked against the intruder's ribs, sending him crashing into the table. The second man lunged. Luna met him mid-air. Her teeth found flesh. He hit the ground screaming. The first man staggered up, rage twisting his features. "You!" Then police sirens. Bennett's voice rang out. "Drop the weapon!"
It was over.
The men were dragged away, handcuffed and bleeding. Ethan exhaled shakily. Luna limped toward him. He knelt, stroking her fur. "You did good, girl." She pressed against him, and for the first time in weeks, they were safe. The future. The next morning the sun was warm. Noah sat in the grass, one of the puppies curled in his lap. Ethan watched them, feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time.
Peace.
Luna lay beside him, her head resting on his knee. She was still here, and she wasn't going anywhere. Ethan smiled, scratching behind her ears. "Looks like you're stuck with us," he murmured. Luna wagged her tail, as if she had never planned on leaving. The night had settled over the house, draping it in quiet shadows. Outside, the world was still, but inside, the steady rhythm of 5 tiny puppies breathing filled the living room. They lay curled against their mother, their delicate bodies twitching in sleep. Noah sat beside Luna, his small fingers gently tracing circles in her fur. "You did so good, Luna," he whispered, his voice full of admiration. Ethan leaned against the doorway, watching. He still wasn't sure how they had gotten here, how a simple drive home on a stormy night had led them to this moment. But looking at Noah, looking at Luna, he knew one thing. She belonged with them, she was family. But that family was still in danger, because someone out there believed Luna wasn't just theirs. And Ethan had a feeling they weren't finished trying to take her back. A threat that feels too close. It started with the phone call. Ethan was in the kitchen, cleaning up after dinner when his phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown number. His gut twisted. He answered, already knowing. "Mr. Matthews," a voice greeted smoothly, "you've had plenty of time to reconsider." Ethan's grip tightened around the phone. He turned his back to the living room, not wanting Noah to hear. "There's nothing to reconsider," he said flatly. A sigh. "That's disappointing." Ethan heard the barely veiled threat in those words. "You don't want to do this," he warned. A chuckle. "Oh, but we do." Click. The call ended. Ethan exhaled, pressing a hand against his forehead. Luna, who had been lying near Noah, lifted her head. Her ears twitched, her amber eyes locked onto him as if she knew, as if she could sense the storm coming. Ethan turned toward the window. That same black sedan sat at the end of the street, waiting, watching, the night. They came. Ethan didn't sleep. Neither did Luna. She sat by the door, her body tense, eyes never closing. And then, just past midnight, it happened. The sound of footsteps. A soft creak of the back gate. Ethan grabbed the baseball bat from the corner. Luna's growl rumbled through the silence. A metallic scrape. The back door. They were picking the lock. Ethan moved quickly. He scooped Noah up from the floor, carrying him to the bathroom.
"Daddy?" Noah mumbled sleepily. "Shh, buddy," Ethan whispered. "You need to stay in here, okay? Don't come out no matter what."
"But—"
"Noah," Ethan said, gripping his son's shoulders. "Stay here." He shut the door before his son could argue.
Then glass shattered. Ethan spun, gripping the bat. Luna was already moving. A shadow slipped through the broken window. Luna lunged.
A scream.
The man fell back, blood dripping from his arm where her teeth had sunk deep. The second figure stepped inside. Ethan swung. The bat connected with ribs, a grunt of pain. Luna didn't hesitate. She leaped again, driving the man backward. Then sirens.
Red and blue lights flashed through the windows.
The men turned.
They ran.
Ethan didn't stop them, because Bennett was already there. A plan to end it. The next morning, Bennett sat at Ethan's kitchen table, his expression grim. "They're not going to stop," he said. Ethan exhaled, rubbing his face. "I know." Bennett leaned forward. "Then we take the fight to them." Ethan frowned. "How?" "We set a trap," Bennett said simply. We make them think they have another chance, and when they come, we take them down. Ethan swallowed hard. You want to use Luna as bait? Bennett's face was unreadable. I wouldn't suggest it if I thought we had another option. Ethan's stomach twisted. But then he looked toward the living room. Noah was sitting on the floor playing with the puppies. Luna lay beside him, ever watchful. She wasn't just a dog. She was a survivor. And she was ready. Ethan turned back to Bennett. Let's do it. The final confrontation. The house was dark. Ethan sat in the living room, heart pounding, baseball bat resting against his knee, waiting. Then, a sound. The back gate. They were here. Ethan gripped the bat. The doorknob turned. Then the door burst open. The first man stepped inside, moving fast. Ethan swung. The bat cracked against his ribs. He stumbled. Luna lunged. Her teeth found flesh. The second man moved toward her. Ethan struck again. A gun clattered to the floor. The man gasped, clutching his side. Then flashing lights. Bennett's voice rang out. Drop your weapons! It was over. The men were dragged away, handcuffed and bleeding. Ethan exhaled sharply. Luna limped toward him. He knelt, running a hand over her fur. You okay, girl? She pressed against him. She had fought for them, for Noah, for her puppies, and she had won. A new beginning. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the windows. Noah sat in the grass, a puppy curled in his lap. Ethan watched, something warm settling in his chest. They were safe, finally. Luna lay beside him, watching over her family. Ethan scratched behind her ears. Guess you're stuck with us now. Luna wagged her tail, as if she had never planned on leaving. The night was thick with silence, broken only by the soft breaths of a sleeping child and the tiny whimpers of newborn puppies. Luna lay curled in the corner of the living room, her body wrapped protectively around her litter. Her golden eyes flickered open at the faintest sound. A car, passing too slowly outside. The shifting of shadows beyond the window. She knew. Even as she rested, she knew danger was coming. And so did Ethan. He sat at the kitchen table, fingers wrapped around a mug of coffee that had long gone cold. His eyes kept drifting toward the front door, toward the windows, toward the small, sleeping figure of his son curled beside Luna. Noah had refused to leave her side since the night they found her, barely clinging to life in the garbage dump. In the days that followed, she had become more than a stray, more than a rescue. She was family, and someone out there wanted to take her away. A warning in the dark. The phone call came just after sundown. Ethan had been putting Noah to bed when his phone vibrated on the nightstand. Unknown number. His gut twisted. He stepped into the hallway, out of earshot, and answered. Yeah? Silence. Then a voice, smooth, calm. Dangerous. Mr. Matthews, the man said. It's time we settle this. Ethan's jaw clenched. I told you before, I'm not selling her. A sigh on the other end. You don't understand, do you? She's ours. And those puppies, they belong to us. Ethan's knuckles went white around the phone. She's not yours, he growled. A low chuckle. She was. Ethan exhaled sharply. If you come near my house. Oh, Mr. Matthews, the man interrupted, his voice almost amused. We don't need to come near. We're already watching. Click. The line went dead. Ethan turned toward the window. The black sedan was there, waiting, watching. Luna lifted her head, a low, quiet growl rumbling in her throat. She knew, and this time Ethan did too. They were done waiting. Tonight they were coming. The break-in, it happened just past midnight. Ethan had barely closed his eyes when Luna's growl snapped him awake. Not a warning, a promise. Then footsteps. Slow, careful. Ethan reached for the baseball bat beside his bed. A metallic scrape at the back door. Then, glass shattered. Luna was already moving. Ethan raced after her just as the first figure slipped through the window. Luna lunged. A strangled curse. A man staggered back, clutching his bleeding arm. The second intruder stepped forward. Ethan swung. The bat connected with ribs. A choked gasp. The man stumbled. Luna didn't stop. She struck again, teeth sinking deep. The first man screamed. Then sirens. Red and blue lights flooded the windows. The men turned to run,
but it was too late.
Bennett's voice rang out. "Freeze!" The intruders hesitated. Then, hands raised, they surrendered. Ethan let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding.
It was over. For now.
A dangerous proposition. The next morning, Bennett sat across from Ethan at the kitchen table, a deep frown on his face. "They're not going to stop," he said. Ethan exhaled, rubbing his hands over his face. "I figured."
Bennett leaned forward. "Then we end it."
Ethan's brow furrowed. "How?" "We set a trap." Ethan stiffened. "You want to use Luna as bait?" Bennett nodded. "We make them think they have another chance, and when they come, we take them down for good." Ethan's stomach twisted. Then he looked toward the living room. Noah sat on the floor, cradling one of the puppies in his lap. Luna lay beside him, her body still weak, but her eyes strong, watchful. She wasn't just a dog, she was a fighter. And Ethan knew, so was he. "All right," he said, voice firm. "We end this." The final confrontation, the house was dark. Ethan sat in the living room, heart hammering, bat resting against his knee.
Waiting. Then
a sound. The back gate.
They were here.
Ethan gripped the bat. The doorknob turned. Then the door burst open. The first man stepped inside, moving fast. Ethan swung. The bat cracked against his ribs. He stumbled. Luna lunged. Her teeth found flesh. The second man moved toward her. Ethan struck again. A gun clattered to the floor. The man gasped, clutching his side. Then flashing lights. Bennett's voice rang out. "Drop your weapons." It was over. The men were dragged away, handcuffed and bleeding. Ethan exhaled sharply. Luna limped toward him. He knelt, stroking her fur. "You okay, girl?" She pressed against him. She had fought for them.
For Noah.
For her puppies. And she had won. A new beginning. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the windows. Noah sat in the grass, a puppy curled in his lap. Ethan watched, something warm settling in his chest. They were safe.
Finally.
Luna lay beside him, watching over her family. Ethan scratched behind her ears. "Looks like you're stuck with us now." Luna wagged her tail, as if she had never planned on leaving. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows as Ethan sat in the dim glow of the kitchen. His hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. Across the room, Noah lay curled up on the living room floor, nestled beside Luna and her 5 tiny puppies. Even in sleep, the boy's hand rested protectively on the mother dog's fur, as if afraid she would disappear. Ethan exhaled, rubbing his tired eyes. Luna had survived against impossible odds. A week ago, she had been barely clinging to life, abandoned in a garbage dump, her body weak, her spirit nearly broken. Now, she was here, safe, a mother, a protector, and yet danger still lurked, because someone out there still thought she belonged to them, and they weren't finished trying to take her back. The threat that came in the night. It started with a phone call. Ethan had been stacking firewood outside when his phone buzzed in his pocket. Unknown number. His stomach turned. He answered, his voice clipped. "Yeah." A pause. Then, a voice. Smooth, calm. The kind of voice that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. "Mr. Matthews," the man said, almost pleasantly, "I assume you know why I'm calling." Ethan's grip on the phone tightened. He glanced toward the window where Luna lay watching him. "I told you before," Ethan said. "I'm not selling her." A sigh. "You misunderstand. She doesn't belong to you." Ethan's jaw clenched. "She's not yours either." "Oh, but she was," the man said smoothly. "And those puppies, they're worth a fortune." Ethan's pulse pounded. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," the man continued. $5,000. You let us take her, and we walk away." Ethan forced himself to breathe. "Not happening." Silence. Then the man's voice dropped to something lower, darker. "That's disappointing," he murmured. "We'll be in touch." Click. The line went dead. Ethan turned toward the window. The black sedan was parked at the end of the street, watching. Luna lifted her head, a low growl rumbling in her throat. She knew.
And so did Ethan.
They weren't just threatening anymore. They were coming. The break-in that night, Luna wouldn't sleep.
Neither did Ethan.
She stayed by the front door, body tense, ears flicking at every noise. And then, just past midnight, her growl deepened. The sound of footsteps. Ethan grabbed the baseball bat beside the couch. A soft creak.
The back gate.
A metallic scrape. The back door. Then glass shattered. Ethan barely had time to react before Luna sprang into action. A shadow slipped through the broken window. Luna lunged. A scream! The man staggered back, blood dripping from his arm where her teeth had sunk deep. The second intruder stepped forward. Ethan swung. The bat connected with ribs. A grunt of pain. The man stumbled. Luna didn't stop. She struck again, snarling, driving the man backward. Then sirens. Flashing red and blue lights poured through the windows. The men turned to run.
But they were too late.
Bennett's voice rang out. Freeze! The intruders hesitated. Then, defeated, they raised their hands.
It was over.
For now. The plan to end. The next morning, Bennett sat across from Ethan at the kitchen table, his expression grim. They're not going to stop, he said. Ethan rubbed his face. I know. Bennett leaned forward. Then we end it. Ethan frowned. How? We set a trap. Ethan stiffened. You want to use Luna as bait? Bennett's gaze was steady. We make them think they have another chance, and when they come, we take them down for good. Ethan's stomach twisted. Then he looked toward the living room. Noah sat cross-legged on the floor, a puppy curled in his lap. Luna lay beside him, ever watchful. She wasn't just a dog, she was a fighter, and Ethan knew, so was he. He turned back to Bennett.
Let's do it.
The final confrontation, the house was dark. Ethan sat in the living room, bat resting against his knee.
Waiting. Then,
a sound. The back gate.
They were here.
Ethan gripped the bat. The doorknob turned.
Then the door burst open.
The first man stepped inside, moving fast. Ethan swung. The bat cracked against his ribs. He stumbled. Luna lunged. Her teeth found flesh. The second man moved toward her. Ethan struck again. A gun clattered to the floor. The man gasped, clutching his side. Then flashing lights. Bennett's voice rang out. Drop your weapons. It was over. The men were dragged away, handcuffed and bleeding. Ethan exhaled sharply. Luna limped toward him. He knelt, running a hand over her fur. You okay, girl? She pressed against him. She had fought for them,
for Noah,
for her puppies, and she had won. A new beginning. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the windows. Noah sat in the grass, a puppy curled in his lap. Ethan watched, something warm settling in his chest. They were safe.
Finally.
Luna lay beside him, watching over her family. Ethan scratched behind her ears. Looks like you're stuck with us now. Luna wagged her tail, as if she had never planned on leaving. The night air was thick with an eerie stillness, broken only by the soft sounds of 5 tiny puppies nestled against their mother. Luna lay curled protectively around them, her golden eyes half-lidded but watchful. Even in sleep, she was alert, ready. Noah sat beside her on the living room floor, his small hand resting gently on her fur. He had refused to sleep in his bed since they brought Luna home, insisting that she needed him. Ethan watched from the doorway, arms crossed, exhaustion weighing on him. A week ago, they had found Luna barely alive in a garbage dump. She had been starving, injured, and heavily pregnant. Now, she was here, safe. But something in Ethan's gut told him that their fight wasn't over, because someone out there wanted Luna back. And they would come for her. The warning that came too late. It started with a phone call. Ethan had just finished cleaning up dinner when his phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown number. His stomach tightened. He answered, his voice cautious. Yeah? A pause. Then a voice, smooth even, dangerous. Mr. Matthews, the man said, it's time we settle this. Ethan's grip on the phone tightened. He stepped away from the living room, lowering his voice. I don't know who you are, but I told you before, she's not for sale. A sigh. You misunderstand. She doesn't belong to you. She was abandoned, Ethan said through gritted teeth. You left her to die. A soft chuckle. She was no longer useful, but those puppies, they are. Ethan's pulse pounded. You're making this harder than it needs to be. the man continued. $5,000, you let us take her and we walk away. Ethan forced himself to breathe steadily. Not happening. Silence. Then the man's voice dropped to something colder. That's disappointing, he murmured. We'll be in touch. Click. Ethan turned toward the window. A black sedan sat at the end of the street, watching. Luna lifted her head, a low growl building in her throat. She knew, and so did Ethan. They weren't just threatening anymore. They were coming.
The break-in that night, Ethan didn't sleep.
Neither did Luna. She sat by the front door, her ears flicking toward every sound. And then, just past midnight, she growled. The kind of growl that sent chills down Ethan's spine. A soft creak outside. Footsteps. Ethan moved quickly, scooping up Noah from the floor and carrying him to the bathroom.
"Daddy?" Noah mumbled, half asleep. "Shh, buddy," Ethan whispered, kneeling in front of him. "I need you to stay in here, okay? Don't come out until I say." "But—" "Noah," Ethan said firmly, "promise me."
Noah's lower lip trembled, but he nodded. Ethan shut the door just as glass shattered in the kitchen. His heart pounded as he grabbed the baseball bat. A shadow slipped through the broken window. Luna lunged. A scream. The man staggered back, clutching his bleeding arm. The second intruder stepped forward. Ethan swung. The bat connected with ribs. A grunt of pain. The man stumbled. Luna didn't stop. She struck again, snarling, driving the man backward. Then sirens. Flashing red and blue lights poured through the windows. The men turned to run, but they were too late. Bennett's voice rang out. "Freeze!" The intruders hesitated. Then, defeated, they raised their hands. It was over. For now. The plan to end. The next morning, Bennett sat across from Ethan at the kitchen table, his face grim.
"They're not going to stop," he said.
Ethan exhaled, rubbing his hands over his face. "I know." Bennett leaned forward. "Then we end it." Ethan frowned. "How?" "We set a trap." Ethan stiffened.
"You want to use Luna as bait."
Bennett's gaze was steady. "We make them think they have another chance, and when they come, we take them down for good." Ethan's stomach twisted.
Then he looked toward the living room.
Noah sat cross-legged on the floor, a puppy curled in his lap. Luna lay beside him, ever watchful. She wasn't just a dog. She was a survivor, and Ethan knew so was he. He turned back to Bennett.
"Let's do it."
The final confrontation. The house was dark. Ethan sat in the living room, bat resting against his knee, waiting.
Then
a sound. The back gate.
They were here.
Ethan gripped the bat. The doorknob turned. Then the door burst open. The first man stepped inside, moving fast. Ethan swung. The bat cracked against his ribs. He stumbled. Luna lunged. Her teeth found flesh. The second man moved toward her. Ethan struck again. A gun clattered to the floor. The man gasped, clutching his side. Then flashing lights. Bennett's voice rang out. "Drop your weapons!" It was over. The men were dragged away, handcuffed and bleeding. Ethan exhaled sharply. Luna limped toward him. He knelt, running a hand over her fur. "You okay, girl?" She pressed against him. She had fought for them, for Noah, for her puppies, and she had won. A new beginning. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the windows. Noah sat in the grass, a puppy curled in his lap. Ethan watched, something warm settling in his chest. They were safe. Finally. Luna lay beside him, watching over her family. Ethan scratched behind her ears. "Looks like you're stuck with us now." Luna wagged her tail, as if she had never planned on leaving. The house was quiet, except for the soft sound of rain tapping against the windows. The night felt heavier than usual, thick with something Ethan couldn't name. On the living room floor, Noah lay curled up beside Luna and her 5 tiny puppies. His small hand rested gently on her fur, even in sleep, as if afraid she would vanish. Ethan stood in the doorway watching them. Luna had come into their lives by accident, or maybe by fate. A week ago she had been barely alive, discarded like trash in a garbage dump. But somehow she had survived. She had found them, and now she was home. But Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that home wasn't safe. Not yet.
Because someone out there still wanted her back, and they weren't going to stop.
The warning came too late. The phone call came at dusk. Ethan was fixing Noah's backpack for school when his phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown number. He already knew. He answered, keeping his voice steady. Yeah? A pause. Then a voice, low, calm, deliberate. Mr. Matthews, the man said, we both know why I'm calling. Ethan's grip on the phone tightened. He turned toward the window. Luna was watching him. I told you before, Ethan said. She's not yours. A sigh. She was. She's not anymore. A soft chuckle. And the puppies, do they belong to you too? Ethan's heart pounded. You've made this difficult, the man continued, but we're patient. A pause, then we'll be in touch. Click. Ethan turned toward the window. A black sedan sat at the end of the street, watching. Luna lifted her head, ears pinned forward, a low growl built in her chest. She knew, and so did Ethan. They weren't done. Not yet. The break-in that night, Luna wouldn't rest. Neither did Ethan. She sat by the front door, body tense, eyes locked on the darkness outside. Then, a sound. The back gate. A soft creak. Ethan grabbed the baseball bat. Then a metallic scrape. The back door. Glass shattered. Luna lunged. A scream. The man staggered back, blood dripping from his arm where her teeth had sunk deep. The second intruder moved toward her. Ethan swung. The bat connected. A choked gasp. The man stumbled. Luna didn't stop. She struck again, snarling, driving the man backward. Then sirens. Flashing red and blue lights poured through the windows. The men turned to run. But they were too late. Bennett's voice rang out. Freeze! The intruders hesitated. Then, defeated, they raised their hands. It was over. For now. The plan to end. The next morning, Bennett sat across from Ethan at the kitchen table. They're not going to stop, he said. Ethan exhaled. I know. Bennett leaned forward. Then we finish it. Ethan frowned. How? We set a trap. Ethan stiffened. You want to use Luna as bait? Bennett's gaze was steady. We make them think they have another chance, and when they come, we take them down for good. Ethan's stomach twisted. Then he looked toward the living room. Noah sat cross-legged on the floor, a puppy curled in his lap. Luna lay beside him, ever watchful. She wasn't just a dog. She was a survivor, and Ethan knew so was he. He turned back to Bennett. Let's do it. The final confrontation. The house was dark. Ethan sat in the living room, bat resting against his knee, waiting. Then, a sound. The back gate. They were here. Ethan gripped the bat. The doorknob turned. Then the door burst open. The first man stepped inside, moving fast. Ethan swung. The bat cracked against his ribs. He stumbled. Luna lunged. Her teeth found flesh. The second man moved toward her. Ethan struck again. A gun clattered to the floor. The man gasped, clutching his side. Then flashing lights. Bennett's voice rang out. Drop your weapons! It was over. The men were dragged away, handcuffed and bleeding. Ethan exhaled sharply. Luna limped toward him. He knelt, running a hand over her fur. You okay, girl? She pressed against him. She had fought for them. For Noah. For her puppies. And she had won. A new beginning. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the windows. Noah sat in the grass, a puppy curled in his lap. Ethan watched, something warm settling in his chest. They were safe. Finally. Luna lay beside him, watching over her family. Ethan scratched behind her ears. Looks like you're stuck with us now. Luna wagged her tail, as if she had never planned on leaving. The wind outside howled against the window, rattling the panes as rain pattered against the glass. Inside, the house was warm, dimly lit by the soft glow of the living room lamp. The only sounds were the occasional crackle of the heater and the soft breathing of 5 tiny puppies curled against their mother's belly. Luna lay protectively around them, her golden eyes half closed but always alert. Beside her, Noah sat cross-legged on the floor, his small hands stroking her fur. You're safe now, Luna, he whispered. Nobody's gonna take you away. Ethan stood in the doorway, watching them. A week ago, Luna had been a half-dead shadow of herself, starving, wounded, abandoned in a garbage dump. And now, she was here. a survivor, a mother. She had found them, but Ethan knew they weren't the only ones who wanted her. And soon the men who had left her for dead would come looking. The threat that came too late. The phone rang just as Ethan was finishing the dishes. Unknown number. He hesitated, then he answered. Yeah? A pause, then a voice. Smooth, measured, the kind of voice that sent a chill down his spine. "Mr. Matthews," the man said, "we need to talk." Ethan's grip on the phone tightened. "I told you before," he said, voice cold. "She's not yours." A sigh. "She was. She isn't anymore." Silence, then a chuckle. "You really don't understand what you've gotten yourself into." Ethan's stomach twisted. "You're not getting her back." A pause. "Then we'll come and take her." Click. Ethan turned toward the window. A black sedan sat at the end of the street, watching. Luna lifted her head, ears twitching. A low growl rumbled deep in her throat. She knew, and so did Ethan. They weren't done. Not yet. The break-in that night. Luna wouldn't sleep. Neither did Ethan. She lay by the front door, body tense, ears flicking at every sound.
Then
A soft creak. The back gate. A metallic scrape. The lock. Ethan grabbed the baseball bat. Then glass shattered. Luna was already moving. A shadow slipped through the broken window. Luna lunged. A scream. The man staggered back, clutching his bleeding arm. The second intruder moved toward her. Ethan swung. The bat connected with ribs, a choked grunt. The man stumbled. Luna didn't stop. She struck again, snarling, driving the man backward. Then sirens. Flashing red and blue lights flooded the windows. The men turned to run.
but they were too late.
Bennett's voice rang out. "Freeze!" The intruders hesitated. Then, defeated, they raised their hands. It was over. For now. The plan to end. The next morning, Bennett sat at the kitchen table, his expression grim. "They're not going to stop," he said. Ethan exhaled. "I know." Bennett leaned forward. "Then we finish it." Ethan frowned. "How?" "We set a trap." Ethan stiffened. "You want to use Luna as bait?" Bennett's gaze was steady. "We make them think they have another chance, and when they come, we take them down for good." Ethan's stomach twisted. Then he looked toward the living room. Noah sat cross-legged on the floor, a puppy curled in his lap. Luna lay beside him, ever watchful. She wasn't just a dog. She was a survivor. And Ethan knew, so was he. He turned back to Bennett. "Let's do it." The final confrontation. The house was dark. Ethan sat in the living room, bat resting against his knee, waiting.
Then a sound.
The back gate. They were here. Ethan gripped the bat. The doorknob turned. Then the door burst open. The first man stepped inside, moving fast. Ethan swung. The bat cracked against his ribs. He stumbled. Luna lunged. Her teeth found flesh. The second man moved toward her. Ethan struck again. A gun clattered to the floor. The man gasped, clutching his side. Then, flashing lights. Bennett's voice rang out. "Drop your weapons!" It was over. The men were dragged away, handcuffed and bleeding. Ethan exhaled sharply. Luna limped toward him. He knelt, running a hand over her fur. "You okay, girl?" She pressed against him. She had fought for them,
For Noah.
for her puppies, and she had won. A new beginning. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the windows. Noah sat in the grass, a puppy curled in his lap. Ethan watched, something warm settling in his chest. They were safe.
Finally.
Luna lay beside him, watching over her family. Ethan scratched behind her ears. "Looks like you're stuck with us now." Luna wagged her tail. As if she had never planned on leaving,